What's up, everyone? Oh no, that's a bad start to the episode. What's up, everyone? It's your friend Joseph Craven here with another episode of 40 Minutes of Hell. I'm on the road. I'm attempting a more portable recording method, so I'm sure the quality will not quite be what it's like when I'm back in the old ROTC studios where I normally record from, but that's okay. It's worth a try. And it'll be a little experimental episode here anyway. It's Friday, which means it's time for the fast break. It's where we get into just a quick little basketball discussion about some of the things that have been going on this week in hoops, in the most beautiful sport of them all. Aside from maybe the beautiful game, because they literally call it the beautiful game. It's like its own nickname. So I guess there's that, but whatever. We're going to talk about basketball now. All right, this was a pretty entertaining week in terms of some of the weird things happening. Well, let's talk about Klay Thompson for a second. Klay Thompson dropped 43 points, and somebody actually reviewed the tape and looked, and he took 4 dribbles. The entire game, he only dribbled the ball 4 times and got 43 points out of the deal. That is phenomenal. But in particular, that's such a unique thing. It got me thinking a little bit about some of the unique comparisons that you can get out of some NBA players. Like, for example, it's easy to look at Russell Westbrook, all right? Russell Westbrook would be a pretty easy guy to compare to Oscar Robertson, okay? Easy because both fairly tall point guards. Oscar Robertson was absurdly tall for his day and age. To be, a 6'5" point guard like that was pretty silly tall. Silly tall? I'm going to roll with it. So that's pretty, it's pretty obvious to compare a hyper athletic point guard to like the original hyper athletic point guard who did everything better than everyone else. But that, of course, is exemplified, if y'all like that term, by the fact that Russ has been the only other player to average a triple-double for an entire season, So there you go. That's pretty great. Pretty great little historical comparison, and a very specific comparison because the two players play very similarly in that they are very physical point guards and physically gifted point guards, but also have accomplished similar things. And that got me thinking about Klay Thompson, and I don't know why I haven't made this comparison before, but it is pretty obvious that Klay Thompson is like the spiritual successor to Reggie Miller. Like, Reggie Miller was the king of, like, the catch and shoot, Reggie Miller was not known for creating his own shot all that much. And that's not an insult to Reggie Miller, because Reggie Miller was incredible at what he did. And what he did was move without the ball. He was incredible at that. It's kind of a lost art. Like, two things that you don't see very well in the NBA in terms of, like, players that do this on an elite level. Or just in modern basketball, not just in the NBA. But in modern basketball, you don't really see people hit the mid-range jump shot. It's just not something people do. Shots come from much farther out or from right under the goal, and that's it. And you don't see people do what Reggie Miller did so well and made an entire career off of, and what Klay Thompson is doing or has done with this 43 points off of 4 dribble performance. He is an incredible shooter, and he's the type of guy who can get hot in a second. A true microwave player when it comes to shooting. But along with that, he is a guy who, I've always thought this is very unique, gets in a weird zone. Like, he gets into a headspace where he doesn't think about anything or really kind of do anything. Honestly, it's creepy now that I think about it. But if you ever watch some of those interviews where somebody asks him a question and he completely zones out to the point of not even being able to answer the question, like, in a way that makes it look like he was listening. He just kind of all of a sudden goes, "Oh, you know what? I wasn't listening. Haha. Let's move on with our lives," or whatever. It's weird. Klay Thompson gets in a weird headspace, a weird groove. and just kind of zones out. And that's really impressive. But in the process, when he gets in this zone where he's just unstoppable as a shooter, as a scorer, as a player, in particular, what tends to happen is he gets electric with his off-ball movement and his getting open with without really any action on his own part. A fascinating example of a very odd, very specific stat line we've put up in Klay Thompson, and it just makes, I think, the Reggie Miller comparison so apt, because what was Reggie Miller most known for? He's most known for the quick burst at the end of the game, 12 points in 10 seconds, whatever it was. I don't know why I'm blanking on the actual statistic, but that's his signature performance memory in the history of his career. That's what he is known for. And Klay Thompson's going to be known for very specific catch and shoot type of things. The most points scored in one quarter, scoring 43 points off of only 4 dribbles. It's that sort of stuff that's going to define Klay Thompson's career. And I think that is why the evolution of Reggie Miller is such a proper comparison to him. And I mean evolution in the purely in the Pokemon sense, where you hit a certain level or give a character a certain item, give a Pokemon a certain item, and it evolves into a tougher version. That's what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Because Law knows that Klay is a little bit more of a defender, than Reggie was. We mentioned Oscar Robertson earlier, obviously a Milwaukee Bucks legend. Let's talk about the current legend of the Milwaukee Bucks, Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is, by all accounts, looking like the popular choice for MVP at this point of the season. I can't say I disagree with him. He has been nothing short of phenomenal, not just this year, of course, but in his entire career thus far. The thing that intrigues me about this is that, you clearly have transcendent players like LeBron James. You have the greatest shooter of all time in Steph Curry in the league. And the MVP award right now, people are really thirsty to give it to somebody other than them, It's we got disappointed in Kevin Durant, so we can't really give it to Kevin Durant. We can't give it to Steph Curry. We can't give it to anyone on the Warriors because the Warriors are such a stacked team. They'll win the titles, give someone else the MVP. So we got to give it to James Harden because he is unique, because he is weird, because he is highly marketable. I don't know. I don't disagree with the James Harden MVP choice, but it does stand out to me as an interesting trend. I'm trying to figure out what the trend is with the NBA MVP right now. Because right now it's coming down to people are it's probably going to be James Harden or Giannis. And I don't know what to make of that. I like what Giannis is doing, and the Bucks are really, really good right now, highest scoring team in the NBA. Giannis just had an incredible performance against Houston the other night that I was watching. I forget what exactly he did. I think he had 20 rebounds, though. It was pretty insane how many rebounds he was grabbing. But he's a player we haven't seen before, Dirk Nowitzki was this player we'd never seen before because he was this 7-footer who had an incredible jump shot, and we were amazed by that. And I'm still amazed by what Dirk was able to do in the course of his career. And Giannis is this whole new specimen, this almost 7-foot tall guy. We thought Kevin Durant was unique because he became this almost 7-foot tall shooter. But then Giannis shows up, and it's this Stretch Armstrong, almost 7-foot, dunks from wherever, dribbles around people, no problem. I don't know. He really is a freakish player. Forget the Greek Freak nickname because it sounds good. And I do think it's one of the best nicknames that we have in all of sports. He is an absolute freak by definition. And here's an interesting tidbit. I lived with a guy for about a year one of my roommates for a year, did not like LeBron James because he did not find him entertaining to watch because he was such a physical freak. I'm going to just let that one sink in for a minute there. He did not find one of the greatest basketball players of all time entertaining to watch. He did not like him because he's like, oh, it's just not really fun. Like, he just kind of is physically, like, bigger than everyone and, like, bullies people around. And I guess he was trying to say he was more entertained by people like Kyrie Irving, who are, you know, who are full of skills. And I get that, but that was one of the dumbest observations I've ever heard in my life. But this guy was obsessed with golf, so take that how you will. All of that to say, the Bucks, I think, need to get more credit than they have been given for having probably the greatest scouting department in the world. Okay, the Milwaukee Bucks right now have a team that players want to play for. Otherwise, you wouldn't have veterans like Greg Monroe or Sonny Ilyasova showing up there. You wouldn't have the whole trade for Eric Bledsoe to bolster the guard position if you did not have the foundation that was laid down by incredible Bucks pickups in the second round. That's right, of course, I'm talking about the guard combo of Chris Middleton and Malcolm Brogdon. I assume Chris Middleton dropped to the second round being like a 6'8" shooting guard, which seems like something that the NBA would eat up. I assumed he dropped to the second round because of how he spelled his name, and people just thought it wasn't worth the risk, you know, of trying to bring in Chris Middleton. But he was this guy who came out of nowhere to be a really solid 2-guard or 3-guard at his second-round pick. Now, of course, he and Brogdon share something in common. They were, you know, like collegiate veterans. And so I think that, you know, how it is. You get a lot of hype coming out of high school. You become a one-and-done player, and then you're in the NBA. And if you stay in college for more than, like, 2 seasons, then your career ends in college. That's just the current way things are done, and I highly disagree with it. And I think Malcolm Brogdon is an incredible example of why I highly disagree with it, because it used to be that a player played for like 3 years in college and then went pro if he was elite like that. And he was more prepared for the game because he had more playing experience on the amateur level. Now, I think college basketball is highly broken, and I don't blame anyone that avoids it, especially those guys that find a way to not play in the NCAA for a year and then still make it to the NBA. I'm all about that, man. You do it. Why not? But you can't say enough about the benefits of playing on a high level of competition for multiple seasons to really develop as a player out of high school, to develop in a situation where you are no longer the best player on the court on any given night, and take that to the ultimate level of being in the NBA. And I think that's immensely valuable, and I think that more teams, more players should be more interested in that. I think we see some trending back to that, seeing the success of Brogdon, seeing Buddy Hield really come alive out in Sacramento on that level. People are understanding the importance of a collegiate veteran, and I think that the Bucks are one of the main players in making that popular again. I mean, heck, look who they have on their roster right now, the experienced college veteran, Dante DiVincenzo. God, I always butcher his name, my bad. But you can't give the Bucks enough credit, I don't think, for how good their scouting department is. Because look at their superstar. They got him with the 15th pick, so he was drafted high, but he was this lanky, young, international unknown who the only thing that people really knew about him was that he was this incredible physical freak in terms of just how incredibly lanky he was, his wingspan, all that sort of stuff. No one could have projected, or no one could have predicted how quickly he would have shot up in ability, in talent, in production. You take a huge gamble anytime you go around... you take a huge gamble anytime you try to build a team and draft a team around, someone that doesn't have enough experience so that we know really where their ceiling actually is. You also take a huge gamble whenever you try to draft somebody who you cannot scout on a frequent basis on account of them being an international commodity. Now, here's the weird combination of that. It used to be really take the time to look at, I think, to look at the top European prospects when they were in their teens up to about 20, and you could really decide things. But that's not the era in which we live in. You want to snag the promising guys regardless of where they grow up as soon as you possibly can. So look at Ricky Rubio and how much pressure was put on Ricky Rubio to become the greatest point guard in the NBA when he arrived, right? I mean, that was kind of the expectation level with Ricky Rubio was this guy's got the most incredible court vision you'll ever see, so on and so forth. Yeah, you do have some success stories like, Luka Doncic, who right now is living up to all the hype. You have stories like, for every good story, you have a story along the lines of one of the guys who maybe is not quite doing what people expected him to do. I look at Mario Hezonja, who I'm a fan of, but is just kind of an all right player. You look at, for all of that, then look at Giannis, no, not really the same expectations outside of he had a lot of physical gifts and they were going to see what could come of that. It's interesting to me that the biggest and most important draft pieces that a player can have, pieces is probably not the right term, because draft pieces is like the draft picks the team holds, I guess. But it's interesting to me that the biggest and most valuable tools that a draft prospect can possibly have are unknown potential and youth. Like the moment that somebody hits like their 20s, or especially hits like 20, that's like the latest that somebody wants to draft somebody, the oldest that somebody wants to draft somebody these days, then I don't know, it's weird. Like that's it. The moment you're past that, no one wants you anymore, or you're not expected to do anything to really grow and develop anymore, which is not the case before largely the 1990s, the 2000s especially, but you go all the way back to Kevin Garnett coming straight out of high school and playing in the league for 20 years, all that sort of stuff. These days, you are expected to be a 18, 19-year-old top pick, and the moment that you don't have time, and you're not expected to have time to learn the game. That's really what it comes down to. It's like the NFL when they go and they draft a quarterback with the first pick in the draft for a team that has a crappy quarterback. And what do? Without fail, they then put that kid in there to start very early on. And when things don't go well, when he A, doesn't have somebody to learn from and a veteran, and B, doesn't have time to actually develop, and instead is just expected to produce like he's been there for a while, well, they fold under that pressure. And so most of the time you find these players that are labeled as busts, and it's not necessarily their fault. They're thrown under the bus quite a bit, and you see a lot more players that I think are later round picks in the NFL that then can have the time to develop and grow and learn the game like they're supposed to. Now, the NBA is a little bit different because there are a lot of times that you can see a 19, 20-year-old know the game well enough and be talented enough to succeed very early on. And look at what Luka Doncic is doing right now as a rookie, and as the brand new focal point of his entire franchise, as the Mavericks, the new face of the Mavericks. It's really impressive, and I think that he will have a very good career moving forward. And I love everything about Luka Doncic, by the way. I'm obsessed with him. He can do anything he wants to with the basketball, and it's wonderful. But those stories are much rarer than the stories of a player that comes in to the league, has all of the potential in the world, but all the pressure in the world, and cracks under them both. And I think that happens a lot because of the fact that we don't allow players to prepare to be in the league enough. Even Kobe Bryant didn't come in and start from day one, or, be the focal point of the offense. They had Eddie Jones there. And by the end of his rookie season, they're looking at Kobe to take over from Eddie, and they move Eddie over to the Heat. But, my goodness, even Kobe Bryant, one of the greatest basketball players of all time, was not picked by a team that expected him to go and play and contribute and lead right off the bat. That was not the role. I think that the way things are going, you're going to continue to see a lot more top picks that don't pan out very well in the NBA, in all sports, really. Unless there is a return to understanding the growth process of an athlete. And I think that's the biggest thing that is lacking in the NBA right now. Now, I do think that the quote-unquote one-and-done rule is actually beneficial to the NBA in that regard. It damages college basketball a lot. College basketball is suffering tremendously because of that, but it does actually help the NBA a whole lot, because it actually gives a chance to scout players in a higher level of competition. Because like high school, and then especially AAU, which is a garbage institution and a joke of an institution, than any of them really do. And I'll be honest with you, this is not the direction this episode was supposed to take when I first set out to record it. Not really sure why I ended up doing this, but I'm really glad that I did, and I hope that you enjoyed listening to it. Maybe? I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up, though, because this is the fast break, and I want this to be at least somewhat fast and give you a chance to move on with your life instead of just listening to my annoying and terrible voice. Hopefully, the quality of this recording has been just a little bit better than it sounded when I first tested this recording style out. Who knows? We'll figure it out. But I'm your friend Joseph Craven, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. I will see you next time here on 40 Minutes of Hell.